Billionaire Arthur Vance sat in first-class seat 2A of the Trans-Pacific flight, his face red with exhaustion and embarrassment as his 6-month-old baby, Lily, screamed at the top of her lungs. For 3 straight hours, every passenger on the plane had been subjected to the relentless crying that no amount of money, influence, or desperation seemed able to stop. Arthur had tried everything. He'd walked the aisles bouncing Lily, offered her bottles, changed her diaper multiple times, and even played classical music on his noise-canceling headphones pressed against her tiny ears. Nothing worked. The other first-class passengers were shooting him increasingly hostile looks. Flight attendants had offered suggestions that failed miserably. Even the pilot had made a subtle announcement about ensuring all passengers have a comfortable journey, which Arthur knew was directed at him. That's when something unthinkable happened. A 16-year-old boy from the economy section walked up to Arthur's seat, his clothes worn but clean, his backpack patched with duct tape. Without asking permission or introducing himself, the teenager gently reached toward the screaming baby. "May I?" he asked quietly, his young voice somehow cutting through Lily's wails. Arthur was so exhausted and desperate that he didn't even question why a stranger, let alone a teenager, was offering to help. He simply nodded, too tired to care about protocol or propriety. The moment the boy's hands touched Lily, something miraculous happened. The screaming stopped. Complete, absolute silence fell over the entire airplane cabin as 200 passengers held their breath, waiting to see if this impossible quiet would last. The teenager was holding Lily with a confidence that seemed impossible for someone his age, gently applying pressure to specific points on her back while humming a soft melody that Arthur had never heard before. Lily's eyes, which had been squeezed shut in distress for hours, slowly opened and focused on the boy's face. For the first time since takeoff, she looked calm, peaceful, almost happy. "How did you?" Arthur whispered, staring at this mysterious teenager who had accomplished what trained nannies and pediatric specialists couldn't achieve. The boy smiled gently. "My baby sister had colic. Took me months to figure out what actually worked." Arthur looked around the cabin and saw something that made his heart race with disbelief. Every single passenger was staring at them, not with annoyance anymore, but with amazement and gratitude. But what shocked Arthur most was what he noticed about this young man. The boy's backpack was covered with science fair and robotics competition patches. His notebook was filled with complex chemical formulas, and there was an intelligence in his eyes that seemed far beyond his years. "Who are you?" Arthur asked, his voice filled with wonder and curiosity. The teenager looked Arthur directly in the eyes with a maturity that was startling. "My name is Kai Tanaka. I'm 16 years old. I'm from East Portland, and I'm on my way to Singapore to compete in the International Youth Science Innovation Fair." Arthur felt his world shift as he realized that the person who had just saved his sanity and his daughter's comfort wasn't some trained professional or wealthy peer. He was a brilliant teenager from a community often overlooked. But as Kai continued to hold Lily, who was now gurgling contentedly, Arthur had no idea that this chance encounter was about to reveal a story of determination, sacrifice, and genius that would change both their lives forever. Arthur Vance was the 45-year-old CEO of Vance Cyber Solutions, a company worth over $8 billion that specialized in network security and data analytics. He was traveling to Singapore for a series of board meetings that could determine the future of his company's expansion into Asian markets. Normally, Arthur traveled alone, but this trip was different because his wife, Clara, was recovering from emergency surgery and couldn't care for Lily. "I can reschedule the Singapore meetings," Arthur had told Clara as she lay in the hospital bed. "Absolutely not," Clara replied firmly. "This deal is too important. Take Lily with you." A last-minute nanny cancellation had left Arthur boarding a plane to Singapore with a 6-month-old baby, no childcare experience, and a packed schedule of crucial business meetings. For the first hour of the flight, Lily had been perfect. Then she woke up screaming. Arthur tried everything, but her cries only intensified. The glares from other passengers, like the tech mogul in 1A and the fashion editor in 3B, grew increasingly hostile. Arthur, a man who could negotiate billion-dollar deals, felt completely helpless to comfort his own daughter. What Arthur didn't know was that a few rows back in economy, 16-year-old Kai Tanaka had been listening to Lily's cries with growing concern. Kai was traveling to Singapore alone, his ticket paid for by community fundraisers held at the local community center and his mother's diner. The International Youth Science Innovation Fair was his chance to win a full scholarship to Caltech. Kai came from a single-parent home in East Portland. His mother worked 2 jobs, and Kai helped care for his 3 younger siblings. When his youngest sister suffered from colic, Kai, unable to afford specialist visits, had spent months researching and developing his own gentle massage techniques to soothe her. After 2 hours of internal debate, Kai's compassion overcame his fear of being rejected. He approached the first-class cabin. "Sir, my name is Kai Tanaka," he said to the exhausted billionaire. "I have a baby sister who had really bad colic. I learned some techniques that helped her. I think your daughter might be experiencing similar discomfort." Desperate, Arthur accepted the help. The moment Kai held Lily, her crying stopped. The cabin fell into stunned silence as Kai worked his magic, applying gentle pressure and humming a soft lullaby his grandmother had taught him. As Lily fell into a peaceful sleep, Arthur learned about Kai's journey. He saw the intelligence in the young man's eyes and the patches on his backpack representing science competitions he'd won against all odds. "Kai," Arthur said as the plane began its descent into Singapore. "I have a proposition for you." He offered Kai a job as Lily's caregiver during his trip, with a generous salary and a guarantee that it wouldn't interfere with the science fair. Furthermore, Arthur offered him a mentorship and support through the Vance Foundation for gifted students from underserved communities. Over the next few days in Singapore, a remarkable partnership formed. Kai excelled at the science fair, his project on sustainable water purification impressing judges with its practical brilliance and innovative design. Meanwhile, he cared for Lily with a natural ease that gave Arthur peace of mind during his high-stakes meetings. Arthur saw that Kai's genius wasn't just scientific, it was a profound ability to solve real-world problems. He offered Kai a future position at his company, leading a new initiative focused on using technology for social good. On the final day of the fair, Kai was announced as the grand prize winner, earning his full scholarship to Caltech. As he stood on the stage in Singapore, he looked into the audience and saw Arthur Vance applauding, with Lily happily clapping her tiny hands. On the flight back to the United States, both knew their lives had been changed forever. The brilliant teenager from East Portland had not only won a competition but had found a mentor and a path to his future. The powerful billionaire had not only found care for his daughter but had discovered a partner who could help him build a meaningful legacy. And it had all started with a simple, unthinkable act of kindness high above the Pacific Ocean. The hum of the Boeing 777 was a peaceful symphony after the chaos of the outward journey. Arthur Vance watched as Kai Tanaka, now a champion scientist, carefully fastened Lily into her bassinet. The baby's eyes were heavy with sleep, but they followed Kai with a trusting gaze. "She really bonded with you," Arthur said, his voice softer than his usual boardroom tone. Kai smiled, tucking a blanket around Lily. "She's a good kid. Smart, too. I think she likes patterns. The way the clouds look from up here, the rhythm of the engine." Arthur nodded, seeing the analytical mind already at work. "That's the kind of observation that changes industries, Kai. Seeing connections others miss." The flight attendant brought them glasses of water. The dynamic between the two had shifted. It was no longer just billionaire and beneficiary, but something closer to colleagues, or even family. "The offer stands," Arthur said, after a comfortable silence. "The Vance Foundation will cover all your expenses at Caltech. But I was thinking about the summer. Before you start university." Kai looked up, curious. "What did you have in mind?" "An internship. At Vance Cyber Solutions. But not fetching coffee. I want you in our R&D lab. There's a project there, codenamed Guardian, that's stalled. It's about using predictive algorithms to identify vulnerabilities in urban infrastructure. Power grids, water systems. I think your perspective, your ground-level understanding, is exactly what it needs. Kai felt a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation. Mr. Vance. Arthur, that's an incredible opportunity. But I've never worked in a corporate environment. I'm just a kid from East Portland. So was I, once, Arthur replied. Just a kid from a working-class neighborhood in Cleveland. You learn. And you'll have a mentor. Me. The plane touched down in San Francisco, where Arthur's company was headquartered. A car was waiting, but not to take them home. I have a slight detour in mind, if you're up for it, Arthur said to Kai. Instead of heading to Arthur's estate in Hillsborough, the car drove to a modest neighborhood in East Portland. Kai looked out the window, recognizing the familiar streets, the corner store, the community center. He felt a strange dissonance, arriving in a chauffeured Mercedes to the place he'd left just days ago on a city bus. Stop here, please, Arthur said as they neared Kai's apartment building. Kai's mother, Lena, was waiting outside, her arms crossed, a mixture of anxiety and pride on her face. When Kai stepped out of the car, she rushed to him, hugging him tightly. Then she saw Arthur, holding a sleeping Lily. Ms. Tanaka, Arthur said, extending his hand. Your son is quite possibly the most remarkable young man I have ever met. Over tea in the small, meticulously clean apartment, Arthur laid out his plan. He didn't just offer charity, he presented a partnership. He explained Kai's internship, the full scholarship, and his vision for Kai's future. Lena listened, her eyes glistening. This is more than we ever dreamed, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But Kai, this is your life. What do you want? Kai looked from his mother's hopeful face to Arthur's earnest one. He thought of his siblings, of his community. I want to do it, he said. But on one condition. Arthur raised an eyebrow. Name it. The Guardian project you mentioned. I want to pilot it here. In East Portland. Use our neighborhood as the first test case. If we're going to protect infrastructure, let's start where it's needed most. Arthur Vance, the billionaire who was used to setting the terms, was silent for a moment. Then, a slow smile spread across his face. It was the same smile he had when closing a deal that would change the market. Done. The following Monday, Kai walked into the gleaming headquarters of Vance Cyber Solutions. He was no longer the boy with the duct-taped backpack. He was Kai Tanaka, science fair champion, and special intern to the CEO. The R&D team was initially skeptical. They saw a teenager, an object of curiosity from the CEO's unusual trip. But in the first meeting about the stalled Guardian project, Kai asked a simple question. Your models predict failure points based on equipment age and usage, he said, looking at the complex data visualizations. But have you factored in social data? Like, which communities report problems first? Which ones have the slowest response times? The vulnerability isn't just in the pipe, it's in the system around the pipe. The room went quiet. The lead engineer, a woman named Dr. Ishikawa, leaned forward. Explain. Kai did. He talked about his neighborhood, how a water main break on his street took days to fix, while one in the Hillsborough area would be repaired in hours. He explained how that delay created a cascade of other problems, business closures, health hazards. He was translating his lived experience into a data-driven insight the engineers had completely missed. The Guardian project was rebooted with Kai as a key contributor. He spent his days at Vance, and his evenings and weekends at home, applying his learning to his schoolwork and helping his family. One evening, Arthur came to the Tanaka apartment for dinner. He sat at their formica table, eating Lena's homemade katsudon, while Lily played on a blanket on the floor with Kai's younger siblings. Arthur watched Kai help his brother with algebra homework, explaining concepts with the same patience he'd used to calm Lily on the plane. Arthur realized this was the real test. Not the science fair, not the corporate boardroom. It was here, in this small apartment, where Kai was balancing his incredible gift with his roots. He was becoming a bridge between two worlds. As dessert was served, Arthur's phone buzzed. It was an update from Dr. Ishikawa. The first phase of the Guardian pilot in East Portland had identified 3 critical, previously overlooked vulnerabilities in the water system. The city had already been alerted and was scheduling repairs. Arthur showed the message to Kai and Lena. "You see," he said, his voice filled with pride. "It's already beginning." Kai looked at the message, then out the window at his neighborhood. The crying had stopped on the plane. The competition was won in Singapore. But now, the real work was starting. He wasn't just a kid from East Portland anymore, and he wasn't just a prodigy at Advanced Cyber Solutions. He was both. And he was just getting started. The unthinkable act of compassion on a plane to Singapore hadn't just changed 2 lives, it had set in motion a partnership that promised to change countless more. The success of the Guardian pilot program in East Portland became a quiet legend within Advanced Cyber Solutions. What began as a summer internship for Kai evolved into a permanent, revolutionary division, the Community First Initiatives Group, CFI. Kai's unique approach, blending high-level data analytics with ground-truth human experience, proved to be a goldmine. Under his leadership, CFI didn't just identify vulnerabilities, it designed elegant, cost-effective solutions. They developed a predictive algorithm for bus breakdowns in underserved transit corridors, saving the city millions and drastically improving commute times for thousands. They created a digital platform that connected small local farmers directly with school cafeterias, boosting local economies and providing fresher food for students. Arthur, watching from the CEO's office, saw his company's reputation transform. They were no longer just a faceless corporate giant, they were becoming a force for tangible good, and their stock price reflected the positive publicity. But for Arthur, the real payoff was personal. Evenings and weekends at the Vance estate often included Kai, who had become a fixture in their lives. Lily, now a curious toddler, adored her Kai, and he was the only person besides her parents who could decipher her babbled explanations of the world. One crisp autumn afternoon, 5 years after the fateful flight, Arthur called Kai into his office. Kai, now 21 and a senior at Caltech, via a tailored remote study program Arthur had arranged, walked in with a confidence that had become second nature. "Kai, close the door," Arthur said, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. He gestured to a chair facing his massive desk. "We have a problem." Kai sat, his mind already racing through possibilities. "Is it the merger with Aegis Systems? I thought the negotiations were on track." "This is bigger than a merger." Arthur slid a tablet across the desk. On it was a schematic of a complex cyber-physical system, a city's entire power grid, water treatment, and traffic control, all interconnected. "This is Nexus, the smart city operating system we've been developing for the last 3 years. It's our most ambitious project. And it's failing." "Failing how?" Kai asked, scanning the data. "The code is perfect. The hardware is state-of-the-art. But in every simulated stress test, it collapses. Not from a cyber attack, but from a cascade of tiny, unpredictable human behaviors. A traffic jam here causes a delayed repair crew there, which leads to a power fluctuation that the system can't absorb. Our models are too rigid. They can't account for the chaos of real life." Arthur looked at Kai, his gaze intense. "The board is ready to scrap it. $1 billion project, down the drain. They say it's too complex, too abstract." Kai studied the schematic, his brow furrowed. He saw the problem immediately. It was the same issue he'd identified on his first day in R&D, but on a massive scale. The system was designed for efficiency, not for resilience. It was built by engineers who thought in logic gates, not by people who understood city blocks. "They're wrong," Kai said finally, looking up. "It's not too abstract. It's not abstract enough. You're trying to model human behavior with binary logic. You need a different kind of math. What kind? The kind that understands that a mother taking a sick child to the doctor will run a red light, that a community will rally to clear a storm drain before official crews arrive, that trust is a variable as important as voltage. Kai stood up, pacing as he thought aloud. Nexus needs a heart. A consciousness. It needs to learn, not just compute. He stopped and faced Arthur. I have an idea. But the board will hate it. It's going to sound like science fiction. Try me, Arthur said, a flicker of his old desperation from the airplane returning. He was once again willing to try anything. We need to build a digital twin of an entire city. Not just its infrastructure, but its people. Their habits, their social networks, their irrational decisions. We feed Nexus into this simulation and let it learn. We don't program the rules, we let it discover them through trial and error. We use generative AI to create millions of citizen agents with realistic behaviors. Arthur stared at him. You're talking about creating a living, breathing digital city to teach our software how to behave. Exactly, Kai said, his eyes alight with the same fire Arthur had seen when he explained calming Lily. We'll pilot it with a digital East Portland. I know every street, every shop, every shortcut. It's the perfect test bed. Against the vehement objections of the board, Arthur gave Kai the green light. The project, dubbed Project Looking Glass, became the company's most secretive and expensive endeavor. For months, Kai led a small, dedicated team in a sealed-off lab. They ingested terabytes of data, census reports, traffic camera feeds, social media patterns, even anonymized utility usage. Kai insisted on qualitative data too, interviewing community leaders, shop owners, and families, including his own, to give the digital citizens authentic motivations. The day of the final simulation arrived. The board members, skeptical and armed with termination papers for the project, filed into the observation room. On a massive screen, a breathtakingly detailed digital model of East Portland came to life. Sunlight glinted off pixelated rivers, digital cars navigated streets, and thousands of AI agents began their simulated day. Then, they introduced the stress test, a simulated earthquake, followed by a power grid failure. In the old model, the city would have flashed red and collapsed within minutes. But in Project Looking Glass, something remarkable happened. As traffic lights failed, the AI citizens, guided by learned social patterns, began directing traffic themselves. The digital model of Kai's mother's diner became an impromptu information hub. Nexus, instead of trying to rigidly control the failing systems, began dynamically rerouting resources, learning from the emergent behavior of its digital population. It prioritized hospitals not just because it was programmed to, but because it had learned their critical role from the collective actions of the simulated citizens. The system held. It adapted. It evolved. The boardroom was silent, save for the soft hum of the servers. Then, one by one, the board members began to applaud. Later that night, Arthur and Kai stood on the balcony of Arthur's penthouse, looking out at the real, glittering city below. You did it, Kai, Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion. You didn't just save Nexus. You've changed the future of urban planning. You gave a machine a soul. Kai shook his head, smiling. No, Arthur. I just reminded it that a city isn't made of steel and wire. It's made of people. You taught me that. How? Arthur asked, surprised. On that plane, Kai said, turning to him. You were one of the most powerful men in the world, but you were powerless to help your own daughter. You were humble enough to accept help from a stranger. That's the lesson Nexus needed to learn. True strength isn't control, it's adaptability. It's trust. It's community. Arthur put a hand on Kai's shoulder, the gesture filled with a pride deeper than any business success could bring. The crying baby on the plane had led to this moment, to a partnership that was healing not just systems, but the very philosophy behind them. Downstairs, Lily was sleeping peacefully, her world safer and smarter because of the unthinkable kindness that had set this future in motion. And both men knew that the next chapter was just beginning. The success of Project Looking Glass didn't just save Nexus, it revolutionized it. When the Smart City operating system launched 6 months later, it wasn't merely a piece of infrastructure software. Marketed as the world's first empathetic urban OS, Nexus could predict not just traffic patterns, but community needs. It could suggest optimal locations for new parks based on social connectivity models, adjust public transportation routes in real time based on emerging community events, and even help cities allocate resources more equitably. Kai Tanaka, at 22, found himself unexpectedly famous in tech circles. He declined most interview requests, but one publication, a major tech journal, convinced him. The resulting cover story featured him standing between the gleaming towers of Vance Cyber Solutions and the familiar, vibrant streets of East Portland. The headline read, "The Prodigy Who Bridged Two Worlds." The article sparked a wildfire. Kai started receiving letters, not from tech giants, but from students, teachers, community organizers. A high school junior from Detroit sent him a meticulously hand-drawn schematic for a community alert system. A grandmother from rural Alabama wrote about her idea for a digital neighborhood watch. They saw in Kai not an unapproachable genius, but proof that their own lived experience had value in the high-tech world. One letter, however, stood out. It was on crisp, formal stationery from the Japanese Ministry of International Trade and Industry. They were launching an unprecedented project, the construction of a new, sustainable city from the ground up, on reclaimed land in Osaka Bay. They wanted Nexus to be its beating heart. And they specifically requested that Kai Tanaka lead the integration team. Arthur handed Kai the letter in his office, a proud smile on his face. "This is it, Kai. This is your chance to build a city from scratch. To bake your philosophy right into the foundations." Kai read the letter, his heart pounding. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But a knot tightened in his stomach. "It's incredible. But Arthur, this would mean moving to Japan for a year, maybe 2. "I know," Arthur said softly. "Lily will miss you. We all will." That evening, back in East Portland, Kai showed the letter to his mother. Lena Tanaka read it slowly, her hands trembling slightly. She looked around their small apartment, filled with memories. "Kai," she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "This is why we sacrificed. This is why the community believed in you. You have to go. But Mom, it's so far. And you've just started feeling better." Lena had recently recovered from a prolonged illness, aided by a health plan Arthur had insisted on providing. Lena took his hand. "Listen to me. You have a responsibility that is bigger than this apartment, bigger than me. You have a gift to see how things connect. The world needs that. Go. Make us proud." The send-off at the airport 2 months later was a poignant mix of worlds. Arthur and Clara Vance were there, with a now 6-year-old Lily clutching Kai's leg, refusing to let go. "You'll video call every day, right, Kai? You'll tell me about the robots?" "Every day, Lily Bug," Kai promised, picking her up for a hug. Next to them stood Kai's family, his mother, beaming through tears, his younger siblings trying to look cool but clearly awestruck by the private jet Arthur had chartered for the journey. Mrs. Gable from the corner store had brought a care package of his favorite snacks, and his high school math teacher, Mr. Reynolds, was there, shaking his hand with a grip that conveyed decades of pride. As the jet climbed over the Pacific, Kai looked at the 2 teams accompanying him, a group of razor-sharp Vance engineers in tailored suits, and a smaller group he'd insisted on, community planners and social workers from Portland who understood the human element. He was the bridge between them, just as he had been between Arthur and Lily years before. The scale of the project in Osaka Bay was breathtaking. The new city, named Harmonia, was being constructed on a sprawling artificial island. The skeleton of soaring, eco-friendly towers and lush green spaces was already taking shape. Kai's task was immense, to weave Nexus into the very fiber of the city, its power grid, water systems, transit, and communication networks. The first challenge came quickly. The Japanese engineering team, brilliant and precise, had designed the transit system for maximum efficiency. Their models showed perfectly synchronized, driverless trains moving populations like clockwork. Kai spent his first week not in the control center, but riding buses and trains in nearby Osaka, watching how people actually moved. He saw students clustering around phone chargers, elderly shoppers with carts, tourists getting happily lost. He saw life. He called a meeting with the lead Japanese engineer, a formidable woman named Dr. Akira Sato. Dr. Sato, Kai began, pulling up his observations on a holographic display. Your system is technically perfect. But it has no forgiveness. It doesn't allow for spontaneity, for discovery. A city isn't a machine. It's an ecosystem. Dr. Sato raised a skeptical eyebrow. Efficiency is our primary metric, Tanaka-san. But resilience is the goal, Kai countered. He showed her a simulation based on his observations. If we leave 10% of the transit routing unoptimized, leaving it to be dynamically shaped by real-time citizen demand, the system becomes 40% more resilient to disruptions. It learns. It adapts. Like a living thing. He saw a flicker of interest in her eyes. It was the same look Dr. Ishikawa had given him years ago. It was the look of a pure logician encountering a beautiful, unaccounted-for variable. Months passed. The digital twin of Harmonia grew in complexity, populated with AI agents whose behaviors were informed by Kai's relentless field research. The project was a staggering success, but Kai felt a growing loneliness. The video calls with Lily and his family were a lifeline, but he missed the messy, vibrant reality of home. One evening, as he was reviewing data streams, an alert flashed on his monitor. It was from the Nexus system monitoring Portland. It had detected an anomaly, a complex, cascading pattern of small failures that his models predicted had a 92% probability of leading to a major regional power outage within 48 hours. It was the exact scenario Project Looking Glass had been designed to prevent. He immediately called Arthur, who was in London. Arthur, it's happening. The cascade. It's starting in the old grid infrastructure on the east side. Arthur's face on the screen was grim. I'll alert the city utilities. But you know how slow they are to react to predictive models. They need concrete evidence. Then I'll give it to them, Kai said, a determined set to his jaw. I'm coming home. Within hours, Kai was on a supersonic jet back to the States, working remotely with his team in Japan and Portland. He landed and went straight to the city's Emergency Operations Center, where skeptical officials were monitoring the situation. You have to initiate a controlled, rolling brownout in sectors 7 through 12, Kai insisted, pointing to the Nexus display. It will relieve the pressure on the failing substation. If you wait for it to fail catastrophically, half the city will be dark for days. The head engineer for the power company shook his head. Son, we can't plunge thousands of people into darkness based on a computer's hunch. It's not a hunch. Kai argued, his voice rising with passion. It's a prediction based on the lived experience of this city. I grew up in Sector 9. I know what happens when the power fails there. People get trapped in elevators, medication spoils, it's not just an inconvenience. This system knows that too. You have to trust it. As the officials debated, the pressure on the grid spiked. Warning lights flashed red on the main board. They were out of time. It was then that Arthur's voice came through on a conference call speaker. He had been listening. Do it, he commanded, his CEO voice leaving no room for argument. Initiate the brownout. I will take full financial and political responsibility. Reluctantly, the engineer gave the order. For 30 minutes, sections of East Portland went dark. There were complaints, confusion. But then, as Nexus had predicted, the pressure on the critical substation subsided. A catastrophic failure was averted. The lights came back on, and the city, unaware of the disaster it had just dodged, went about its night. In the silent operations center, the head engineer turned to Kai. He extended his hand. "You were right," he said, his voice full of grudging respect. "Your city, it spoke to you." Kai returned to Japan, but the experience solidified something in him. He had proven that his work wasn't an abstract exercise. It had real, profound consequences. Dr. Sato, who had witnessed the entire event via video link, met him upon his return. "Tanaka-san," she said, with a new depth of respect in her voice. "We have reviewed the Harmonia plans. We believe we should design the central plaza not for maximum pedestrian throughput, but for maximum human connection. Perhaps, with space for a market, like the one you described in your neighborhood." Kai smiled. The lesson was spreading. 2 years later, Kai stood with Arthur, Lily, and his family on a balcony overlooking the newly inaugurated city of Harmonia. The city pulsed with life below them, its systems humming with a graceful, adaptive intelligence. It was a testament to a new way of building, one that valued resilience as much as efficiency, and humanity as much as technology. Lily, now 8, held Kai's hand. "It's beautiful, Kai. It feels friendly." Arthur put an arm around Kai's shoulders. "You did it, son. You built a city with a heart." Kai looked out at the glittering lights, thinking of the long journey from a screaming baby on an airplane to this moment. The unthinkable act of compassion had rippled outward, changing a company, saving a city, and now, birthing a new one. He had learned that the most complex systems, whether a crying baby or a metropolis, weren't problems to be solved, but mysteries to be understood with patience, empathy, and a willingness to listen. The journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. And for the first time, Kai felt not the weight of expectation, but the quiet excitement of a future where technology and humanity could truly learn to dance together.